We knew.
Good afternoon, 2 p.m. on May 8th, 2020 and 2019. This is a workshop called to order. Do we have any amendments to the agenda?
Is there one in the door?
With no amendments to the agenda, may I get a motion, please?
I move that we approve the agenda as written.
Second, please.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll, please.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Motion carried unanimously.
Okay, number 3 is department reports. Fair and Event Center, Ms. Sparks. To the microphones, please. And anyone that's going to speak is going to need to approach the microphones to do that, please, so that we have everything on record. Council, are we running here?
And adjust.
Well, I guess the first order of business is we are starting to prepare for fair. So getting all of our entertainment, everything in place. Fair is the July 24th through the 27th. So we'd like to invite you all to come and participate and be a part of it. The things we're doing right now, we started the dorm rentals. We have, I talked to Forestry today, they have a whole group coming. We already have, I think, 4 people in the dorms from Forestry, but different departments of Forestry, not our local group, but they will start coming and they'll have another group that come right after Labor Day. So we're starting those rentals. We made about $9,000 last year on those rentals, so we expect to do at least that much again. And we're open to parks. We have 2 parks employees that will be coming, and other county, state, and city agencies, anybody who needs it for whatever reason, employees that are here temporary. We are doing that. We have just upgraded those dorms again. We, purchased some appliances, dishwashers, and right now being put in another microwave. We've reconfigured, my employees reconfigured the counters just to make it more usable. So we are in the process of doing that, almost finished. The dishwasher, we need another electrical plug for it. Doesn't go where we need it to be. So that will be the last piece. But like I said, we already have 4 that are in there, and they'll rent for the season, really usually through October. So there is that. We just had, we have Curry Fair Friends, which is our catering, and which, that money goes to help with the operation, about $25,000 a year to help with the maintenance and operation of the fairground. And we just had the hospital auxiliary had this last weekend, their annual dinner. So we had that, and it was very successful. And we have weddings coming up, lots of different events coming up. The fair, the barns, our stables that we have, they will be moving out June 15th. They can't be there for fair. Only 4-H kids with horses can be there. So we will be doing that, and we'll be doing some repairs on the stables. Lots of rails need to be replaced and things like that. So we've already purchased those supplies. We have community volunteers, really our motorsports people, mostly from Brookings, have volunteered to come and paint all our railings. And so along with the horse barn boarders are volunteering their time, and our crew will be sanding those down, painting them before fair, and possibly adding another about a foot on those railings, just as a safety precaution. So I have 2 welders that are my employees, and so we're looking at that, getting the supplies that's needed, and scheduling that. So basically that's what's happening this last month. We have a lot of, like I said, we have weddings and different things coming up in June and July, and lots of catering. So is there any questions anybody has?
Commissioner Gold?
I have a question related to your rentals. I met with some people from OSHU yesterday, and one of the things they're looking for is to rent some places for these interns. Do you do long-term leases? That's what they prefer?
That is what we do in the dorms, if that's what you're talking about. They rent because they come out. They cannot be there during fair. That is a 4-H building, and 4-H uses that building. So consequently, during fair, everybody has to move out. A lot of them camp on the grounds. They make other arrangements, and that's part of the dorms.
We're talking 3 days.
Yeah, well,
Maybe a
the
week.
4 days. Well, that's when it is. So no one can be there during fair, but we do rentals, and we do it with the individual. Forestry doesn't rent. Each individual from forestry signs a contract with us. We charge them by the day, and they come and pay in, twice a month usually. So we are open to someone like OHSU or, whoever, as long as they're an agency, state, city, county. We don't do private.
So I will give them your information.
That would be great.
You guys can talk. Okay, thanks.
I have a couple questions. Financial resources, have you guys come up with any additional or possible financial resources for this year?
Just what we get from fair, and hopefully we'll increase that sponsorships. I've been out doing sponsorships and going to new people that we haven't gone before. So we're looking at hopefully getting more sponsors. And basically that's what we're doing right now. I wish that we had a different venue, but right now we don't. We're redoing our master plan. So we are doing that. I met with the architect last week. He's going to do a presentation to the board in about 2 weeks about developing our the RV park that's there. That is separate from the master plan, but actually a part of it. But that's what we're looking at to try and create another source of revenue. So that would be our next biggest thing.
I guess more my question is, what does your board do or the fairgrounds do to go out and seek new revenue? Do you have people that actually go out and shake hands with people and offer?
Yeah, well, some of the
services for
board
the
does
fairgrounds?
too, but absolutely. I go out and I meet with every sponsor that has contributed, and like I said, this last couple of weeks, that's what I've been doing in the whole county. So I personally go out and meet them, and I go out to new businesses. If I'm going to Brookings, I look at all Brookings and have those printed up or blank ones printed up, and when I'm wherever I am, I go in and introduce myself and do try and gain new sponsors. So I do that.
A couple of maintenance issues. The roof on the one part of it. How's that coming along?
The Dosha roof.
Yes.
That is the city, that's what they're committed to. And we did get the report, I think 2 weeks ago, from the structural engineer that came out, and so the city is moving forward with that. I think we're hoping to get that fixed this summer, probably be in August. It's not going to be before fair. They just can't do it that fast. But we're kind of scheduling or not scheduling events for August, hoping as soon as fair's over, that roof will come off and we'll repair that. And the city is working with us to make that happen.
One more question I have is, when you do work on the fairgrounds, do you put it out for an open bid and receive bids?
Yes, I do. On that structural engineer, I'll just take that for example. We went out for quotes because of the amount of money. We did go out, we always do 3, really only 1 responded, but we did make the effort. We do have that documented, so yes, we do go to bid. And I think I know what you're referring to because there was an issue with the plumber that we had when we did the dishwasher. That was kind of a one-off kind of thing because we didn't know what had to be done, how it had to be done. And since they were bringing I want to say $18,000 dishwasher that friends purchased for us to the kitchen, we had one of the requirements is that we had a plumber there to do that because they aren't coming back and forth, although they have about 4 times. But so that's kind of what happened on that. We did research, the parts, and there was some thought that, we could get this for $250 for a part that we paid. That wasn't the case. The part itself was over $900 when we researched it. So that doesn't normally happen. We didn't know that the dishwasher had been there for, I don't want to say 30 years. So we didn't know what was going to happen when we pulled that out, and that's what happened. It needed additional electrical.
That's what
and
the part of the bill that I noticed seemed excessive was the electric, not the plumbing.
Right.
And all it was is I think it was 1.5 inch conduit that they pulled through the wall into a 3-phase breaker.
Yeah, but that part was, we did go back and look at it, and it was really expensive, because after you brought that up, we thought, well, okay, we didn't have a choice. Like I said, they had to be there to do that while they were there, but we did go back and look at it, because and just so you know, they gave us a super discount. I think less than half of what it was. They discounted what they did anyway. And we work with them a lot. That they seem to be the one that's always the the least amount, and the one that's most available and responds to us. So they did give us a really deep discount. So that was good.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Speaking of the dishwasher, Mr. Haney made me promise that I would still have to do a considerable amount of dishes by hand.
You will.
I might get to be the first one to turn it on.
Well, not first.
Maybe.
It's working now.
Oh, it is working now.
We had the event this last weekend, so they were doing dishes, believe me.
And it's working good, though.
Works great.
Great. I'll still do them by hand.
Okay.
Nikki, Commissioner.
Yes.
Nikki, I have a question.
Sure.
I took a little tour through there, and I noticed it looks pretty run down in certain areas. There's a camper there, a lot of debris, I think, around it, and
There shouldn't be any campers outside, other than the dorm building. They have 2 vans there, like a bus and a van. We can't let anyone camp knowingly on the grounds.
It almost looked like a homeless person staying there, but I noticed there's just a lot of things that need maintenance and attention. Have you ever thought about partnering like with corrections or juvenile to help with some of the maintenance out there?
We have done that in the past. They do call us when they have people that can come. Corrections doesn't do it anymore. That used to be our biggest source of help. We used to have every day at least 4 to 8 inmates, and the sheriff's department doesn't do that program anymore. And I have done with the juvenile, but they do call me when they have one that can come, and so we have partnered with them, but not on a steady basis. They don't do that. So yes, we're open to that, but
okay. And then the city gives you what, $70,000 a year? Is that right?
well, it depends. It's their TLT. We've never received any money from them. It's in their fund. It is at their discretion how it's spent. So they have designated, we did a study about 3 years ago at FAIR to everyone, but outside too, about how this money would be spent, and that was chosen. Dosha roof was the most immediate need. It had to do with buildings that we receive income from. That had to be top priority, and Dosha is our #1 thing that we rent. And so they picked that. They actually are the ones who chose the process of the structural engineer. They picked them. This is someone that was recommended by their head of their department, who they wanted. They brought him from Portland. So and they will be paying that out of that fund, but we haven't received any money, and we don't. They will pay whatever invoices come in out of that to that structural engineer. They're paying that. So
that's good to know, because I think a lot of people just think you're getting a portion of that TLT.
we get nothing. We haven't received any money yet from that. So there is about, I'm going to say, at the last meeting, I think there's about $160,000 in there now for the last couple of years that it's been in place. But that will probably mostly go to the roof, because the plans alone for the structural engineer, I think, are like $25,000 for that. But that comes out of the city, and they pay that.
One more question I have.
Sure.
With the motorsports that you have in the arena, I know we spoke briefly about it. Was there anything more done with that? Looking into some type of better ventilation during that event, because it was pretty tough.
And it is tough, and it has been for a lot of years. And nothing can be done on that ventilation until the roof is that building has extensive roof issues, and even on the siding. If you want a little tour, I'll take you and show you. But and that has to be repaired before anything can go back on that roof. It was designed a certain way. It wasn't built the way it was designed. That was, years ago. So it's always been not adequate.
But there are some end wall fans that were in that have been removed, correct?
They were in the gable. That was years and years ago, nothing
Right.
that we removed. But as they said, that has to be repaired before, it doesn't support any of those things. So that's why. And we, just so you know, I have gone out and talked to a structural engineer in Coos Bay and gave them the plans of those, and he is looking at that. He hasn't got back to me yet with an estimate or a bit of what needs to be done, but I've talked to him about a month ago and took the plans up to him. So we are working on it.
I think that's all I have.
I'm good.
All right.
Good job.
Okay, anybody else want to talk?
Now we're in trouble.
Yeah, thanks.
Put the clock on this guy.
Yeah, I love public speaking so much I'll stay here for an hour. Bob Chabante, and current chair of the Fair Board. A couple of things I'd like to mention is one, as a while back, I brought each one of the commissioners a copy of the strategic plan. When you mentioned about other funding and stuff, in that strategic plan, there is items laid out what we're going to do to seek for alternative funding, additional funding, grant seeking. One thing we're looking at in that plan was working with Watershed to improve our lake that we have down there where the carnival usually sits, and try to do some type of filtering type system to do that to get that in there. It's just one of the things that we're looking at. Also, with the master plan that's coming up, we'll be looking at leveraging some of the funds that we do have to look for grants, additional funding to try to invest the money and get some better help to get things done. One of the things that we've been doing the last few months is Nikki, myself, and Ron Cook, since Ron Cook represents the Curry Fair Friends, is we've been meeting with OSU, we're meeting with Frank and discussing their situation, what's going on, since they're our primary tenant that we have there at the facility, and making sure that they're comfortable and happy what's going on. There are plans that have been in the works that they have to do that, and we have a couple options to look at so it can make that space more usable, and making it ADA friendly so we can have upstairs, downstairs, and have a commitment. And in that discussions, we've been talking about possible ways where Curry Fair Friends can help, and also we can seek other funding, whether it's from the OSU contacts or other contacts we have to do that. There's no commitments on it. We're just right now talking to see where we can go and see what's feasible to get done, make sure that our tenant is well taken care of to do that. So as far as seeking funds, you do know it's limited. It's only what we get from the Fair Friends, what they bring in the rentals. And hopefully we're trying to work on that, improve that, and turn that into a class facility so we can attract even more people to do that. And as far as one of the things, the event we just had, it goes beyond what helping the fairgrounds. It helps the communities up and down, because it was the hospital fundraiser to do that, and they brought people from out of town to participate in their event, to help them raise money, to help the community, to help the hospital, help all of us. So that's just a little bit more of what we've been doing. It's been a thing with the OSU. They're important to us. We let them know, and we've been having some pretty good discussions to get that done. And then we're working with the rest of our tenants following.
Commissioner Boyce?
You don't have to respond. You can, certainly, but it just, I have a sense that the board you have right now is really united and working very hard, committed, very active. There might be some exceptions, but I see 3 or 4 here today, and it's just a very positive sign, I think.
Yeah, and am I speaking for myself personally, and the feeling I get, I think we were very committed to the value of the event center to the community, the entire county, to all of us. You would not get in if you were not invested in it. And there's, to be quite frankly, in small communities, you happen to see the volunteers and stuff on a number of different things because they are committed. So we have a belief, we have a faith, we know the importance of it, and we're going to stick it through and try to get it done and work together. Like any other family, you have a little nits and picks and arguments, but when you walk out that door, you stand united and get the job done.
Thank you. Thanks for the strategic plan as well.
Sure,
a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and
work went into that.
also just so you know, it's also on the website, so it's available for the public to see. They can go look on it, and anybody can look at it and read it and see where we're going. It took a few months to get that together, and we got it done, and we're moving forward.
Thanks. Anything else? All right, thank you.
Oh, we have a hand raised. Mr. Jean?
Yes. Yes, sir.
My name is Gene Clausen. I've been associated with the fair for 4 years now. 4 years as a volunteer and 3 years as an exhibitor. I have some remarks to make regarding the fair that are not positive remarks. I would like to preface those remarks by reminding everyone that, as well as the President of the United States, the fair manager of Curry County Fair represents the government. A citizen has a right to criticize his government without fear of retribution. I fear retribution from that my statements are going to cause me to be banned from being an exhibitor again this year. I would like to make sure that you are all aware of that situation.
Duly noted.
Okay. The main thing I want to talk about, the Fair Board is familiar with this from almost a year ago. When Mr. Posh was candidate for the commissioner's seat, he and I appeared at the Fair Board meeting with one concern: the air quality in the arena during the motorsports events. And I'm happy that Mr. Posh addressed that already today. A lot of things were said, and he's covered those. But what it boils down to is that the chairman of the Fair Board said in that meeting that she refused to go in the arena during those events due to the absolute poor quality of the air and the levels of carbon monoxide. At that time, Mr. Posh and I offered to pay for all of the engineering, all of the design, all of the labor, and all the material to get end wall vents that have nothing to do with the roof in place. We were asked to supply the names of a structural engineer and an electrical mechanical engineer, and I selected ones who had both successfully completed multiple municipal projects, public works projects in Curry County in the last 3 years. To the best of my knowledge, neither one has ever been contacted. So we come back to the fact that at the moment, we're looking at a county fair again this summer with some pretty serious issues regarding the air quality in the arena. And from what I've heard so far today, it has really not been addressed. I had a feeling this was going to be the case, so I've contacted the Oregon State Police, who now have the Oregon Fire Marshal under their auspices. Every station of the Oregon State Police has a certified air quality officer in the Fire Marshal's division. They have said that any citizen has the right to call them and on emergency basis and tell them that there is a public endangerment situation. And they are willing to stand by Friday night at the arena if their motorsports events are going to be started. He will be bringing his air quality test equipment, and if he sees bad numbers, he has the authority to shut down the event and have the county sheriff evacuate the building. This is a serious situation. If you look at the memorandum of understanding between the Fair Board and the Board of Commissioners, it says that the Fair Board must indemnify, must make sure that the county through its Board of Commissioners, is not to be held liable for any situations that can occur on the fairgrounds. All it's going to take is one person with a breathing problem, and we're going to have a real problem. There's going to be a whole lot of money that's got to be refunded. Will have to be refunded for tickets. They are by far the two biggest draws at the fair. There's no arguing that. But we just cannot go on and let this happen, especially when the Fair Board chairman said in front of Mr. Posh, myself, and the rest of the board that she refused to go into the arena because of that situation. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
So you're going to speak to that?
I think I've already spoken to it. I mean, I would like to see something done with it. I think if it endangers the public, absolutely, that we need to address it. I'm just wondering if there's a possibility we could get some. I know when I was training racehorses, we had these great big circular fans. They were probably 3 feet across, and they sat on the ground, and I mean, those things would push a ton of air through them. Maybe it would help in there anyway, until we can get something structurally done in those eaves, so that we can put the end fans in. Feel free.
Well, she's coming up. Is that a possible solution?
Well, I just want to say that I did contact the engineer. That is who I contacted in Coos Bay and spoke to the one that Gene gave me. And that is who has the plans and is currently working on the project. It is the one that he gave me. So I hope to hear from him soon. I did know that he had concerns and issues, and I don't recall that I ever said I did not go in. I said I went in, and I have asthma, and I had to leave after the first quarter. That I don't refuse. I go in there now, but it did bother me. So I know there's an issue, but I do have asthma, so that was my issue with it. So I get it that, you know, it's got a lot of exhaust and issues. Like I said, we're working on that. I don't say we can't do fans. I will research into that and see. We were hoping to get more done before, but that, as I said, that isn't on the priority list of, you know, it has to be buildings take precedence that we rent. We don't rent that building. And so that's why. And I can't change that, but I absolutely can look and see how much exhaust fans on the ground are. I know it can't be up on the roof, but that's a viable option, and I will look into that.
Yeah, I will say there are some pretty good sized exhaust fans that you can buy for just a few $100s.
Yeah, and I'll look. I will.
They're a 2 horsepower motor with a 30-inch blade on them, and they'll move a lot of air, because we've had, well, in my business, the barns would get so hot the horses couldn't take it, and we'd put one at each end, and it was like air conditioning in there. It was amazing.
Yep.
So
And we will look at that.
thanks.
Okay.
All right. Projects. Number 4. A, Parks Proposed Regulation Update. Mr. Hopkins.
Josh Hopkins, Curry County Parks Director. So, Curry County Parks Department is wanting to update and amend the Exhibit A Rules and Regulations of Article 5. Last time this was done was back in 2000. Many changes have taken place over the last 19 years. The usage of the campgrounds have increased drastically during this time, which is part of what's spurring our need to do this, because with that increased use, we've had increased in conflicts, especially at our big campground, Boys Cove Park. The goal of this update is to create a means where the Parks Department can address the issues we are currently facing on a daily basis during the summertime out at Boys Cove, as well as address issues that we expect to be facing with the continued increase in use of these campgrounds. With the campgrounds, to come up with the ordinance information that's in front of you guys with the proposed changes, I reviewed and spoke to a lot of different parks departments across the state, figuring out what type of issues they're currently facing. We all kind of have the similar issue right now because of the increase in use that everyone's experiencing. A lot of those issues focus around parking and people camping in areas they shouldn't be camping at, and people or regulations like what we've currently got that don't have a set way to go from telling someone, hey, you can't camp here, to being able to cite someone. Currently we have a county code enforcement officer, so now we can do that type of stuff. Once we came up with an idea of what we wanted to have in our plans, and I took a bunch of the information from other counties, what they were using, I put that information out in front of the Parks Committee. The Parks Committee reviewed the information, provided a bunch of insight on it, made changes, added, removed, all sorts of stuff like that to kind of better meet our need. We then had the county code enforcement officer come in, and he reviewed the information, made changes that matched up with the regular county codes that make it easier for him to enforce, as well as verify that, yeah, he is on board with helping us out. He says he's up in the Langlois Boys Cove area at least once a week, and it wouldn't be a big issue for him to come, you know, possibly issue a citation. Definitely something we never want to actually have happen, but we need to have the ability to do that type of thing, because that's what helps keep enforcement of those rules. Then we had it reviewed by county council, just again, more insight, changes again, moving things around, making sure we're doing the right path. So just to highlight some of the new regulations that are out there on this document, what you have in your packet shows a strike-through version with bold. The strike-through is what is being removed. The bold is what we're looking to add to the rules and regulations. Some of the new regulations highlighted, we have a regulation now that will prevent camping at our day use areas, as well as set day use times and limits for when people can be out at our day use areas. These are standard things that almost every park system has. We have several day use areas, but we don't actually have a regulation to stop people from camping on our day use areas. So when we got Boys Cove and we're turning away dozens of campers a day, a lot of times they'll go down and camp at our day use area. If we tell them they can't camp there, some people are really good about it. They pack up, they go. Other people, they may stay the night, and there's not much that prior to this we would have been able to do about that, except for just let them know you got to be gone by the morning, and it normally works out. But now we'd be able to let them know we have an ordinance in place saying you guys aren't allowed to camp at our day use area. That's becoming a larger issue across the state and across pretty much our whole region due to Martin versus Boise, which was pretty big a couple months back, but it's still having that type of effect. Everyone's looking for ways to protect their public lands and everything like that, and these are ways we kind of do that. Additionally, we added information and language into the document that further protects the public lands from being able to camp wherever you want, to saying no, you need to be in an established camping spot to camp on our public land that is registered as a county park land or recreational designated area. We added a stay limit of 14 days. This stay limit is something we've been enforcing for years. It's actually on one of the regulation boards out there, but it's not adopted into our county park regulations. I'm not quite sure where it got added at some point for someone to be using it, but as it stands, our regulations don't reflect that we only have a 14-day stay limit. 14-day stay limit is pretty much the standard across all park systems, whether you're at a state park, BLM, forestry, or other county parks across the state. Everyone has the 14-day stay limit. We do it so that we don't run into occupancy issues, we don't run into people refusing to pay and staying as long as they want type of a thing. Many of the rules that we've updated in this are based on parking. Parking's probably our biggest problem out there right now. We've got limited parking spots, limited day use spots, and limited spots for people to camp in. More campers are bringing more extra vehicles, which is nice on the side that we do charge extra vehicle fees, but those also limit the parking spaces we have. It's not uncommon for someone to bring their trailer, a truck, an additional vehicle, and a boat behind that additional vehicle out to Boys Cove. We get these caravans coming through, and we park them as best we can, but inevitably we end up people just deciding they can park themselves. They end up parking on the lawns. They end up blocking in other campers. We've had it to where we've had day-use kite surfers come in, park in front of someone's actual camp space. That camper can't get out to let the other camper in while the guy is out kite surfing on the other end of the lake. We go out to the lake and say, hey, we got to get your car moved, try to be as nice as we can about it. And there's times that they say, oh, we'll get to it when we get to it. And so we're back at the campground just trying to make it right amongst the campers that are in there waiting. These are the issues that we are currently facing all the time out at Boys Cove Park. And these are the issues we expect to face going forward. Making this type of update now allows us to get ahead of these issues, allows us to get it in place to where the county code enforcement officer, when we do have someone that does one of these egregious acts that is above and beyond what we can just say, hey, we've got something going on, can you please move your vehicle? If they're, refusing to do that, we have a means to be able to cite and enforce. You enforce one or two of these regulations on a few people, word gets around, that type of negative behavior gets curbed real quickly. So in front of the board, with this packet, we do have a draft ordinance. In the draft ordinance, it's registered as an emergency ordinance. I think the case can be made that if the board was to decide to adopt this as an emergency ordinance at the next available business meeting, this is kind of an emergency situation. Our park season with the majority of campers are coming up right now. We've got hundreds of campers coming to our campground, thousands of campers over the next few months. It's going to be a daily thing, July through August, where if you go out to Boy Scope, you have cars parked all the way out to Flores Lake Loop, all along the right-of-ways, all along everything like that. With that being said, it's our peak season. Currently, we have no rule and regulation in place that protects our day use area, protects the other land around there from people camping, and allows us to be able to maintain the area to the level we need to be able to maintain it. Mainly, if we don't adopt this within now, as opposed to the normal 90-day process, 90 days from now, we're going to be in the middle of our season. All these issues are already going to be going on. A lot of these issues can't really be addressed, and then we're going to have to start making that shift at halfway through the season, which can be a big difficult as opposed to doing it now. The whole idea behind this is that we need it because of the increased campers coming to our campgrounds. Between the day use users and the campers, these rules and regulations are used to maintain safe and enjoyable recreational experiences for all of our guests. And not only that, for the locals that live in the area too. Our year-round locals get bothered by these campers and everything like that every year. We work well with them. We try to be as nice as we can. But they too want to see us doing more of the enforcement type of a thing of these types of rules and regulations. Whether it's noise complaints or anything like that, we need to have these types of things. One thing that was mentioned to me by the county code enforcement officer yesterday was that with our update and with the previous versions, we don't actually have a regulation stating they need to pay their park fees. I did go back yesterday and looked at a bunch of different counties and what they're actually using. Some counties have a set regulation stating they need to do it, some don't. With our regulations, I think we'd be covered based off of rules 1 and 3 with the wording around it, because all of our stuff is posted as part of the rules. You're supposed to follow it. That being said, I would recommend, before moving forward with adoption, adding a rule that basically states somewhere along the lines of no person shall enter or use any county park or any of its facilities without first paying the required fees. We could add that into the regulations, real simple, updated, brought back to you guys. That's almost verbatim for what 3 other counties use, just because then it gives the county code enforcement officer a specific regulation he can cite instead of leaving it up to some sort of interpretation. So if the board is on board with updating these rules and regulations and agree with me that this should be done as an emergency type situation, I would recommend bringing this back to your next available business meeting, either as a consent item agenda or action, whichever you guys prefer. Additionally, if you have any sort of amendments, any sort of questions, any sort of further information you'd like from me about this process or what we've got going on, now's kind of the time to ask.
Well, a couple of questions I have. First of all, you're asking for an emergency to this. I don't know if it would be an emergency declaration because we'd have a couple of weeks to look at it anyway, so it could be adopted at the next meeting. But my question would be is why wasn't it given why couldn't we have gotten this a few weeks ago?
He did.
Earlier into the season.
So, a couple of things going on with that. For one, part of this has been working with the Parks and Recreation Committee. So we did a bunch of the stuff at their first meeting in January, and then we reviewed a bunch of what we did at their second meeting in March, and came up with what we actually wanted to move forward with. I've actually been working on moving forward with this since that time. You guys canceled several meetings at the end of March, so there was that aspect of it that slowed pretty much a lot of stuff down. And then we just didn't have it quite finalized and figured out for the previous meetings up till now.
I'm not asking that to pick on you.
No, it's fine.
I'm just asking a reasonable
That's
question.
the reason.
Another question is, I just had something that you said I just had a question on. If someone is parking in front of a guest that's in the park and they're down flying a kite, you can't tell them you got 15 minutes to move your car or we're going to tow it.
With the current regulations, I don't think we can do that. With these regulations, we would be able to do that. With the current regulations, I'd end up having to contact the sheriff's office and possibly county council just to see what we could even legally do in that aspect.
What would we do on that, council?
What we're supposed to do is post a sign on the property that says prohibited parking area, and then owners will be towed. So
At their expense.
right, and we've recently posted those kind of signs on a couple of properties at the county, and also the prohibited camping as well. So that's the first step in being able to tow a unauthorized parked car. So we've got those signs available. It's just a matter of putting them up.
Well, I mean, I think this is something we need to look at, Commissioner Gold.
My only question is, how long does it take to pass a regular ordinance? You mentioned 90 days?
Is it that'd be further question for council.
Thank you. So the regular ordinance procedure is first reading, second reading, and then effective 90 days after the second reading. So, you know, in the next cut on the 22nd, and then 2 weeks after that into June, and then 90 days after that, and we're past summer. So an emergency ordinance can be adopted on the first reading, effective immediately. So that's the kind of the idea here.
Would your legal expertise say we meet that threshold?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've seen us invoke emergency ordinances under less exigent circumstances than this. So.
Mr. Chair.
Just want to make sure we're following the rules. Yes, sir.
Just quick clarification. We only postponed one meeting. I thought you said, if I understood correctly, we canceled several, and that's not my recollection at all. We've been pretty
Two that I
aggressive in
know
meeting.
of, lack of a quorum.
Lack of a quorum. 2 meetings.
Okay, so, do we want to bring this forward at the next meeting then?
I think we should, and I think it should be an emergency ordinance.
Does the board have any current issues with the rules and regulations as written, and also allowing me to add in the language saying that they have to pay their fees?
I think that's a good language to add into that, so yeah, I'd be in agreement with that.
I'm fine.
Certainly.
Okay,
Thank
Good
you very
work.
much.
thanks. All right, so Ms. Schmelzer, you'll set that up?
Yes.
Projects, discuss vision and goals, Commissioner Boyce.
Would you like to go first on what your outlook is for the future?
No, I'm good.
Would you like to go, Commissioner Gold?
No, I'm fine. My concern on this whole thing is we're going to be hiring someone to do a strategic plan. And generally speaking, I've been through a number of strategic plans. They do like a work session with you, and they know how to lead you and guide you through all of this. So I think we're maybe putting the cart before the horse a little bit here.
Well, I want to open up the floor here, and let's see, it's not even 3 o'clock yet. Am I on the target here, Mr. Jesuit?
Yeah.
Would it be that one?
Yep, says goals.
I'm changing this just a little bit on I want to add control cost and find new revenue sources. This has been a real interest of mine, and I think a tremendous obligation to try and find additional revenue. And so I want to know if the commissioners, the board I serve with here, there hasn't been a lot of ideas come forth. And so I have been quite open about the consumption tax, and I've asked for help on that for over 2 years. And if you look here, how do we unite Curry County? How do we put the interest of people first, defense of our public safety, block any attempts to raise property taxes, and then, control cost. And the reason I emphasize controlling costs, because as we move into the budget season, we have a record, especially Commissioner Gold and myself, that we have to defend on what our votes have been the last couple of years, in fact 28 months, but in particular the first 2 years. I've gone before the board. I haven't really, other than publicly open at our different meetings, I've challenged the board that there's been up to $500,000 that went away. And the people want us to work very, very closely together. And that's a reasonable anticipation, but they also want us to be civil, moral, but they want us to be sane in everything that we do. So if this is true, and I believe it's very close to true, I'm getting attached to that by the citizens of this county. And in fact, I was in complete opposition to all of these votes. And again, coming back to our budget session, budget week coming up, and then all that follows that, with the different department heads we have, the task before us that's so important is to set all those departments up for the best possible successes that they can be. And we're going to have a better idea next week where we are in the amount of money that we may be short. In order for them to do that, those 5 elected officials, Crumley, Jim Colin, Everett Dial, John Ward, and Renee Colin, have 133 years experience between them. I might have added in this board as well. But I don't feel like I'm here, Mr. Chair, to protect the status quo. I'm here to question everything, and I think that's what I was elected to do. And that means even being very direct on how we got here and how we lost that $500,000. And how we can prevent that from happening again, and how we can turn that energy to support our departments and keep our services going. And yes, I have a little bit of difficulty when I voted consistently against everything that has happened in the last 2 years. We have lost many people during the Tom Huxley 4-year era. And then the last 2 years, I mean, the list is here. And I'm going to put this out to the public because I'm not going to be associated with this. The record is very clear. And if Commissioner Gold, I'd ask you some reasonable questions. I mean, if you had it to do over again, would you pay Prothman Advertising $40,000? You voted twice. Do you think that was money good and well spent for the citizens?
Actually, let me just say, once I was in opposition when you wanted Prothman to get an accountant. So that was $7,500 then. And yes, I think I'd vote the same way.
So you would vote, I just want to make sure I understand, the citizens to understand that you would, another $40,000. Do you remember, if I may, Commissioner Gold, do you remember when Prothman come to us and said they had 11 applicants, none of which they could recommend to this board? And shortly after we hired, well, 2 months later, I think we hired Clark Schroeder. So do you remember that? And then we voted, in my opposition, we voted against extending additional funds to that agency, which we didn't have with all due respect, in my opinion.
Could I just say one thing? I think by dredging up the past and so forth continually, we're having a harder time working together. I think what we need to do is start moving forward. That's just my take.
So you're not going to defend your record to the public, and does it concern you that I'm associated with those votes when I voted 180 degrees off? Does that concern you?
Actually, I think you've made yourself very clear over and over and over again.
I'm going to ask you very respectfully to answer the questions. Would you do the lawsuits against me again? And do you understand what the consequences and cost was to the county? Would you do that again? If you say, I've waited 6 months for an apology, if you say, no, I wouldn't do it again, I think we've got an area that we can join forces and say, yeah, there were some mistakes made. I can forgive you for that. The citizens I can recommend they forgive you. But if you still feel like that was money well spent and the citizens were well served, I'm just beyond baffled. And then if I may also ask you about the KCIW interview, do you stand by your statements there that this is the most dysfunctional board that you've ever served on?
I'd have to say that, yes.
Well, can you explain that? This is a workshop. That would help me to understand if we can join forces and get some really positive momentum going. How is this the most dysfunctional board you've ever served on?
Okay, I think I've talked about what a functional board does. Once decisions are made, you move forward and do the best you can. Just like Chair Pash said this morning, sometimes you don't always vote the same, but you go out of the room just like the chair of the fair board said, you go out of the room and you work together to accomplish those tasks. That's what I think a functional board is.
So this is a dysfunctional board. How do you expect me to relate to you that way when you characterize me as dysfunctional? How can I look to you for guidance and co-ownership and the responsibilities and the task we have before us? I'm sorry. I mean, I could go on all day with the decisions that you made with Commissioner Huxley that has cost this county dearly. Do you think it's even close to $500,000 and how we might be able to recover on that?
I don't think I'm going to comment any further.
I wish you would, because it's the only chance we got to really make a difference. Our jobs are clear.
Let's do this. I think the point's been made, and I think let's go ahead and move on here.
Well, I'm gonna keep asking for apology to the citizens for those lawsuits that you filed, and
Lawsuits? I don't believe there was more than one lawsuit.
better read it again, please. There's a citation, a lawsuit, and then another lawsuit that, did you ever come out against the Catherine Wiley lawsuit? Do you stand behind that as a good decision?
I had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Did you ever come out against it publicly, that it was not good for the county? And what was
You
the
know what?
ruling?
I'm not going to make any more comments. I think this is not
Well, I have
pushing
many
us
more
forward in
questions,
any way.
and I'm going to make sure the citizens understand.
That's
And I'm
good.
giving you an opportunity to move forward and say, yes, we can change this direction. We can find the revenue. Would you support a serious look at a consumption tax and not raising property taxes?
Actually, I think I've already made myself clear on that issue as far as a consumption tax. I think a consumption tax would be good as long as it's not causing the poorest among us to have problems. So,
Thank you. That's one positive thing that I can bring from this workshop so far, Mr. Chair. And if that's how she feels, I've never heard her say that before, but it gives me
actually I have.
reason for. Okay, if I missed it, I apologize, ma'am. But it's the point is, it's a potential positive step forward.
Is that all?
For now, thank you.
Okay. Anything further? This workshop is adjourned.
That's what we just did, I think.